Hello one and all, welcome to See Through Glass. Now, ever since I bought my Ferrari 360 4 years ago, I've regularly received questions as to why I didn't consider an F430 instead. Historically, these two models have been fairly similarly priced on the used market, but the 430 is newer, more powerful and theoretically better, but also this is the last mid-engined Ferrari that they offered with a manual gearbox, potentially meaning it's a more significant car. Well, I think most of you know, the 360 holds my heart, but today, thanks to DK Engineering, I'm going to find out whether maybe I bought the wrong car. The first half of 2022 was so busy that I haven't driven my 360 since the Mille Miglia, back in June. Okay, admittedly, the car has been at AV Engineering ever since, but hopefully you would have seen my update video with orders from AV that went out a few weeks ago, basically explaining that nothing's really been wrong with this car. It was kind of a super simple fix after that epic 1,000-mile journey around Italy. It's been, too busy with other projects to get behind the wheel of the thing. But I've just been on holiday for a couple of weeks, resting, relaxing and recharging the creative juices ahead of what's going to be an even crazier second half of 2022 that will see me behind the wheel of this car a whole lot more. Now, if you're new to this channel and you're wondering where I am, I live in London and parking a car here, let alone a Ferrari, is incredibly difficult. So I keep the 360 at Windrush. This place is so much more than a sort of car storage facility. I guess you could call it a car concierge. I just basically call them my friends who seem to care about my car, sometimes more than I do. Whenever I come in to collect it, it's sparkling clean. They let me know if they notice anything wrong with the car, if it needs a new MOT. They help facilitate getting it down to places like AV Engineering, and I just always know that the car is safe and secure and resting up, ready for the next big journey. They've actually just expanded their London facility into this new space, which is absolutely huge and filled with pretty incredible cars. Half the fun of coming to Windrush is, well, collecting your own car, but also trying to work out what else is here undercover. I mean, that's definitely a Monza, isn't it? That's definitely a Ferrari Monza. But anyway, we are here, as I say, to pick up the 360, gleaming and clean and ready to hit the road. This car is 20 years old. 20 years old, and it still makes me more excited than most modern stuff. I think its official birthday's in a couple of weeks, 25th or 26th of September. And to celebrate that fact, I'm trying to get it over 50,000 miles on the clock. I've nearly achieved that goal. We're at 49,415, so really not far to go. But I'm not going to get to 50,000 miles and then stop. It's just a kind of marker I set for myself. So yes, lots of adventures to happen before the end of this year to keep enjoying and celebrating this glorious car. What else can you look forward to for the rest of 2022? Well, plenty of new car launches, classic car test drives, potential trips to Perth in Australia and LA in California, some other adventures I'm sure, and of course the delivery of my new Porsche 911 GT3. So yeah, subscribe now. You're not going to want to miss out some epic stuff ahead. But right now, I'm on my way to DK Engineering because whilst I was away, they got a very interesting Ferrari into stock. A manual F430, obviously the successor or the replacement to this car. And I thought it'd be interesting to go check it out. Back in the day, pre-YouTube, when I had an office job, I used to hate coming back from holiday. I just dreaded going back to work. Look at my life now. My first day back at work, I'm sitting, drinking an espresso next to an F40 and F50, one of the most incredibly spec'd 430s I've ever seen. When the guys at DK got this car into stock, they were doing some research about the 430 from when it launched, and there was an Evo article proclaiming that the 430 was like a baby Enzo. It was that much of a step forward from the 360, and for Ferrari, they were blown away by it, and they were just making these huge proclamations. So yes, maybe you would expect to see F40, F50 and Enzo down at DK. That's the kind of cars they have knocking around. But instead they've swapped out the Enzo for a 430, the baby Enzo. It's kind of mad to think of this car as kind of a baby hypercar because, well, the world's moved on so much, hasn't it? And I'm really intrigued and excited to get behind the wheel of this car. But for now, I'm gonna sit here, enjoy my espresso and my little chocolate, look at the view, and then we'll pull the 430 out of here, get it next to the 360, talk about the changes, before we then go for a little bit of a drive in this very good looking modern classic Ferrari. How good do these cars look together? I mean, I would say that. This is my era of Ferrari, what I'm going to call the De Montezemolo years, the Schumacher years. It was kind of like the mid-90s to the late 2000s. For me, it's everything I love about Ferrari. Interestingly, when the 430 launched, a lot of people commented on the fact that they didn't think it really stylistically looked that different to the 360. It felt like sort of half a step forward rather than an entirely new model. But actually, this car only shares 3 body panels with the 360. The bonnet, the doors, and the roof. Everything else was new. And as I already touched on, mechanically or performance-wise, it was a massive step forward, and a load of new stuff was put into this car over and above the 360. But yeah, just as a thing to look at, it just fills me with, well, emotion and memories of that perfect modern classic era, and as I say, a really peak point in my mind of Ferrari. Now, I've spoken at great length about how I ended up buying my 360 Modena. Essentially, I had a dream that I owned a manual 360 Challenge Stradale. Woke up and remembered that they actually never made a manual Challenge Stradale, so went on the hunt for the kind of most extremely spec'd, most racily spec'd 360 Modena with the manual gearbox. Now, finding a manual 360 wasn't that difficult. Of the 8,000 or so 360s that were made, over 2,000 were spec'd with manuals, because back in the early noughties, people were kind of a little bit undecided about flappy paddle technology, the F1 gearbox. So a lot of people, especially in the UK, still went for the 6-speed manual. The split was about 50-50. But by the time we came to the 430, well, the world was in a different place, and flappy paddle gearboxes, or the F1 technology, had really advanced, and Ferrari were making a big deal about this. Of course, they were dominant in Formula 1. They really introduced the kind of flappy paddle gearbox into that sport, and it was now funneling down into their road cars, and they were saying that this was the route to go, that the changes were super fast, super snappy, super quick, and world customers kind of went, yeah, I think that's probably what I'll choose. So the manuals became incredibly rare with the 430. Only about 10% of cars were ordered with the 6-speed manual gearbox. It was actually the cheaper option. So often, if you find a manual 430, the spec of the rest of the car isn't that fantastic, because people were essentially trying to save money. But this car right here is a completely different story, clearly spec'd by an enthusiast, because, as you're going to see right now, the options are spectacular. Obviously, it's not Rosso, it's not red, which, you know, for me is a shame because I'm a cliched Ferrari owner, but actually, I think this colour is working really well. First thing we have to know is right here, carbon ceramics. It's the first time that Ferrari offered carbon ceramic brakes on their sort of main production or full production mid-engined V8. You could get them on the Challenge Stradale, but obviously not on a 360 Modena. They were extortionately expensive,
£1,000 for the carbon ceramics, and they didn't actually add much power, it's just longevity. So they said you could get around 350 laps flat out off the carbon ceramics. So they look amazing, and they will last a lot longer, but they're sort of, you know, performance-wise, it wasn't a hugely different step. Then we come on to the interior, because for me, this is where this car gets really, really special. Of course, yes, there we go, that very rare manual gearbox, but also the carbon bucket seats. They're around a £7,000 option. So again, it's really racking up the cost of this car, as well as then also the carbon fiber interior trim, which you can see up here on the steering wheel and around the dash. It just makes this thing feel inherently very, very special, and almost like a kind of manual 430 Scuderia vibe. And basically that's what I was doing with the 360. It's that manual Challenge Stradale vibe. So if I were ever to buy a manual 430, this would definitely be the one for me. I tell you what, this car immediately feels way more grown up than my 360. And I'm not just talking about the way it drives. Actually, this interior just feels, I don't know, like a step forward from my car. I love my 360, I love the way it's designed, but the interior, well, it does look a bit dated these days, a bit simplistic. This is fairly refined. Maybe it's just the optional carbon fiber pack that's working wonders for me, but I really feel like I'm in something special. Interesting to note as well, this is actually the last mid-engine Ferrari that got the F1 Constructors World Championship plaque. After this, Ferrari basically stopped winning in F1, so I think they felt like they couldn't really get away with putting that plaque in their cars anymore. So yeah, really nice to have that as a bit of a nod to this era, this wonderful era. The steering wheel is super nice, the dials laid out slightly differently. It's, yeah, feels good, feels different. I was expecting it to be very similar, but it's not. We have to talk about the steering wheel as well, because this car, the 430, gained the Manettino, the now iconic Manettino. Up until this point, we'd only seen it in the Enzo and the 599. The Challenge Stradale did get a start-stop button, but down here on the central tunnel, it's now on the steering wheel. And yes, we've got the ability to switch between driving modes. The 430, you've got snow, wet, sport, race, and then CST off. That's all linked to the quite major EDIF, electronic differential. This was a big thing for the 430, which really changed its driving characteristics over a 360. And let's get into those driving characteristics, because yes, this car just feels tight, sort of smooth, but just a bit more serious. The steering, it's got a bit more weight to it. The 360 steering is very light, which I like. 430 just feels a little bit more, I don't know, yeah, weighty is the only way really to describe it. Still super pointy. In terms of actually power, we gained nearly 100 horsepower over the 360. We're up at like 485 horsepower, I think, for this car. The 360 at 400 horsepower. That's fairly significant. It's a 4.3 litre now instead of the 3.6, but still completely naturally aspirated V8. But it's kind of the way that the power is delivered. It's sort of a lot smoother. My engine feels quite raw, aided by the fact I've got that super shouty exhaust. The way that this thing puts its power down, it feels very linear and like it just wants to take off. I do feel like I'm in a much faster car, even if it is slightly quieter. It's amazing how noise can kind of give you the sensations of speed. You don't realise you're actually not going that fast. It sounds like you are. I'm talking about my car here. But yeah, this thing, oh God, does it fly, and it just feels so stable when it does. It's an incredibly accomplished car. I'll try and illustrate that now, if I can get a little bit luckier with the traffic. It is Friday afternoon and coming up to 4 p.m, so we're out in near peak rush hour. So I keep coming across a lot of traffic, but I'm determined to have some fun in this thing because, oh my God, it is a fun car to drive. I mean, look at this. It is just perfect on an English B road. Even a damp one like this that I'm having to slightly be cautious on. It's so much more composed than my car. It really, really is, and it feels way more modern. It's sort of baffling to think that this was just 4 years later. My car's a 2002, this is a 2006. It does help that this car has just 8,000 miles on the clock. Nothing. It's basically new. But yeah, it's a very, very engaging drive, aided by that manual gearbox. Bit of traction control cutting in. If we want to dial that back, we can switch us up to race. Yes, there we go. That Manettino just making this car even more exciting to drive. Really not that stiff either. I was kind of worried that, you know, with the changes to the suspension, the setup of this car was going to get a bit firmer, but it's still such a nice road car. Boy, is it fun. Look at this. It's outrageous. What a thing. What a serious car. This isn't such a sort of modern classic sports car. This is really a modern supercar. Just a bit of an old one. And a really, really engaging one.
I feel like my car heard me saying such good things about that manual 430 and like some kind of jealous girlfriend summoned bad weather, so I'd have to come back here to DK. Some pretty ominous looking clouds off in the background. But anyway, I am now back at DK and just reflecting on what an awesome experience it was to drive that manual 430. To answer the question that so many of you have asked me, and I kind of asked myself at the start of this video, did I buy the wrong car? Should I got a 430 instead of a 360? Well, no, because for me, the 360 has always been my kind of poster car, the car that I lusted after. The 430, for some reason, never quite appealed to me in the same way. Even though that experience was amazing, I don't sit here going, oh, I wish I was driving that home and not my own car. What's so interesting though is that back in 2005, 2006, when the 430 launched, lots of journalists asked whether, well, Ferrari had gone too far. The world had gone mad, it's too much power, there's too much going on. We wish we had simpler times, just like we're all doing now. I mean, I endlessly, on this channel and on the podcast, say, oh, our cars have gone too far. Let's go back to an old classic era where things were just better and simpler, like the 430. So what was too much 2006 now becomes kind of perfect in 2022. Mad how the world works. But yeah, for me that really represents, well, kind of the pinnacle of that era for Ferrari, but that era for road-going supercars. If you're watching this thinking, my God, I need a manual 430 in my life, well, either call DK now or be prepared to hang around and wait to find one. Because as I said, they are rare, 1,500 or so produced ever. But finding one in as good a spec as that with the carbon seats and all the carbon trim, that's going to be very difficult to do. And they're the ones you want because, as I say, it just makes you feel like you're in something really unique. Oh, been a very good day and a fantastic way to come back from holiday. I hope you've enjoyed it. Give it a thumbs up if you have, and make sure to stay subscribed because, as I said, crazy things are happening in the rest of 2022. It's really going to kick off. I feel like I can hear something outside. Let's go and check out what that is because it's DK. It could be something amazing.